الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في كلامه المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, there are 5 categories of Sharia. You might say, I've heard about the 5 branches of the 5 pillars of Islam. What is he talking about? No, there is 5 categories. The first is imaniyat, iman, faith, our belief system, our aqidah, what we believe in. When a person is going to take the shahada, going to come into the fold of Islam, the 6 tenets of faith that I count off, you have to believe in Allah and the angels and the scriptures and the prophets and taqdeer, destiny and the hereafter. Those 6 tenets of faith fall under this category of imaniyat. The second is ibadat, acts of worship. So namely the 4 main acts of worship, arkan arba are salat, som, zakat, hajj. Prayer, fasting, zakat and hajj. The third category is mu'amalat. Mu'amalat are dealings. Dealings, our contractual agreements, buying and selling, taking a loan and paying that loan back. The laws of inheritance, when a person dies, how will his wealth be distributed? That falls under mu'amalat. The longest ayah in the Quran is not about ibadat, it is about mu'amalat, our dealings, right? We should not cheat anyone in our dealings. Waylul lil mutaffifin. You should not be, no corruption, bribery, all of that falls under mu'amala, dealings. The fourth is mu'asharat. Mu'asharat is lifestyle, for lack of a better word, means how we behave with one another. I don't have any contractual agreement with you. You don't have any contract signed with me. So it's not a dealing, but how do we interact? We as human beings do not live like hermits in solitude. We live with other human beings. How do I behave with my neighbors? How do I behave with my family members? How do I behave with my parents? That falls under mu'asharat, our behavior, Islamic behavior. Okay. And the 5th category is akhlaq, our good manners, akhlaq, that have to do with the heart, that we should rid our heart of jealousy, of hatred, the desire to do something for glory or name or fame, to be honest, and to have sabr, patience, to have forbearance, hilm, and to be forgiving. All of that falls under good manners, akhlaq. So these are the 5 categories. Believe it or not, most of Sharia, if you open the books of fiqh, they will begin not from imaniyat, because fiqh, the Islamic jurisprudence, Islamic law, right, doesn't have to do with iman, with your faith. That's a different discipline. Islamic law, Islamic jurisprudence, when you open the books of fiqh, will begin from where? Where will it begin from? Ibadat, correct? Kitabus Salat, how to pray. Kitabus Zakat. And then it will move on to mu'amalat, dealings, and mu'asharat. 25% of Islamic jurisprudence has to do with ibadat, acts of worship. Salat, Som, Zakat, Hajj, and whatever you might be able to fit in, Salatul Janaza, Salatul Istisqa. 75% of the Sharia 75% of Islamic law has to do with muamalat and muasharat, has to do with our dealings and our interaction with one another and how we behave with one another. Sadly, we don't even consider muamalat or muasharat, our dealings and our interaction, as part of Islam. We think, oh, this is outside the realm of Islam. This is very much part and parcel. As a matter of fact, when Islam starts coming into a person's life, it starts coming from this side, from this end. From where? The first thing to come into his heart will be Iman, faith. And then he will embrace ibadat. The second thing that will come into his life will be worship. And then the third will be muamalat, dealings. And then the fourth will be behavior, interaction. And the fifth will be akhlaq. He will adopt and embrace good akhlaq, good manners. When Islam starts to leave our lives, when it begins to leave the lives of the Muslim Ummah, where does it start leaving from? It starts leaving from this side. It starts leaving from the... Can you please close the door? It starts leaving from this end. Which end? Akhlaq. The first things to go out the door is what? Akhlaq. And then the second thing to exit the lives of the Muslim Ummah will be muasharat, our behavior with one another. And the third thing to leave will be muamalat, our dealings. And the second to last will be ibadat. We will abandon the ibadat. And the last thing to leave the life of a Muslim is his iman. Then he is no longer a Muslim. So when it starts coming into our life, when Islam starts coming into our life, it will come from this end. Iman, faith, and then worship, then dealings, then interaction, and then manners. And when it starts leaving, the first thing to leave will be manners, then behavior, Islamic behavior, and then dealings, then ibadat, worship, and then iman. Then there's nothing left. Today's topic, as a matter of fact, any khatib giving any khutbah in any masjid in the world, his topic will be focused on one of these 5 categories, correct? He will not be speaking outside of these 5 categories. It will be one of these 5. Today, we're going to touch upon muasharat, Islamic interaction and behavior with one another. We're just going to touch upon it. We're going to discuss the foundation of an Islamic interaction amongst Muslims. The foundation, the cornerstone of an Islamic muasharat, Islamic lifestyle amongst the Muslim Ummah, amongst the members of the Muslim Ummah, the bedrock, the foundation of it is called al-ukhuwa fil Islam, brotherhood, the concept of brotherhood. This is a radical, this is something revolutionary, radical concept that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught, that Quran speaks of. Imagine you wake up one day and you are told this person who is your biological brother is not your brother, he is your brother. Why? Because your biological brother is not a Muslim and this person is a person of faith. You have more affinity, more loyalty with this person because you share the same belief. You believe in Allah, I believe in Allah. You believe in the akhirah, I believe in the akhirah, hereafter. You believe in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam as the seal of all prophets, I believe in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam as the seal of all prophets. This shared belief system is the most effective in building a cohesive community. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this is the secret formula. This is the secret formula. You can try to build a society, and people have tried to build communities based upon language. We share a common language, so we are one group. Or we are of the same color, so we are one group. Or we share the same culture, we share the same food, so we are one. These are artificial, and these are not long-lasting. Nation state, the whole entire world now lives under nation state. Nation state means a group of strangers living together who share a common culture. This is probably the most flimsy out of all the ways to build a cohesive community. This is probably the most flimsy. And that's why you need law and order to keep it together, because it can break up any moment without law and order. If you don't have law and order for one day in this country, just imagine. Why do you need law and order? Why do you need this branch of government, the police, this, that? Because you have to keep the citizens in line. Anyhow, that's a different topic. The formula that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought to build a community is shared belief. Shared belief. Shared belief, shared values. Innamal mu'minuna ikhwa. All believers are brothers. Now, when you see this again and again in the seerah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'll just point to one incident. In the battle of Badr, there were 70 captives from the mushrikeen, from Makkah, the idolaters. What to do with them? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was lenient by nature, gave his opinion that, O Nabi of Allah, let us take ransom money from their rich relatives in Makkah and then release them. Umar radiallahu anhu, being harsh in nature, his opinion was that, O Nabi of Allah, give each captive, each prisoner over to his nearest relative from amongst the believers. Battle of Badr, for all purposes, was a civil war. You had father on one side, son on the other side. Yes or no? You had uncle on one side, nephew on the other side. So give each prisoner over to his nearest relative from amongst the believers, so this nearest relative can chop his head off and prove that his loyalty, his affinity, his bond of brotherhood, his ukhuwa fil Islam is not with his biological relative, biological brother, but it is with Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam approved the opinion of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But that's not the end of the story. What happened is Quran came down, Surah number 8, ayat number 57. مَا كَانَ لِنَبِيٍّ أَن يَكُونَ لَهُ أَسْرَى. It is not appropriate for a prophet to have prisoners. حَتَّى يُثْخِنَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is not the time to take prisoners until Islam becomes the dominant force. Because what's going to happen is if you let them go, they're going to come back in the battle of Uhud and challenge you again. So this is not the time to take prisoners until Islam becomes dominant. تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا. Then Allah Azza wa Jal stated, oh, do you want the glitter and the glamour, the wealth, the moolah, the Benjamins of this life? Is this why you took ransom? Is this why you're taking money from their relatives in Makkah and returning the prisoners? تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةِ. Allah intends the hereafter for you. In other words, Quran came down in support of whose opinion? Umar radiallahu anhu's opinion. Not Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's opinion. That this is not appropriate for a prophet to have prisoners of war. Now, this story highlights that our bond, our loyalty should be stronger with who? Yes. Regardless of what language he speaks, regardless of where he comes from, what food he eats. This is very revolutionary. I mean, how can I explain it? We say brother, 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 but that's not it. That's not it. What Quran is saying is he is your brother. Not even he's like your brother, but he is your brother. There is no difference whatsoever. He is your brother. Who? Your brother in faith. He is your brother. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the first thing he did when he arrived in Medina Munawwara was build Masjid al-Nabawi. The second thing he did was he gathered the Muhajirin and the Ansar and made what? Brothers. Yes, you are responsible for him. You had the Muhajirin and you had the Ansar. And Quran speaks, وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Those who had embraced Islam and had adopted Medina as a home from before. In other words, the Ansar. Right? Those who embraced Islam and had adopted Medina as a home from before. Long before. The Ansar. What do? وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. They love those who are migrating towards them. They love the Muhajirin, those who are coming from Makkah. Usually what happens is there's always a segment in society who do not like outsiders. Why are these Mexicans coming from across the border? Why these immigrants? Why these refugees? They are taking away from our limited resources. There's so much, a pie, right? They're going to be taking from the same pie. So that's their thinking. They're going to be taxing. It's going to take a toll on our resources. Why these outsiders? But Quran says, يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. They love those who are coming, the immigrants, the muhajirs. They love them. وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا. And these Ansar, they do not find in their hearts any resentment, any desire for what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving the Muhajirin. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the distribution of wealth sometimes would give the Muhajirin more than he would give the Ansar. Why? They needed more, right? They were more needy because they came to Medina with the clothes on their back. So they were more needy. It's like someone who's been living in America for 40 years, right? Is more financially established, more well off than someone who just came yesterday. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give the Muhajirin more, but they did not resent this. وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. And some of the Ansar were poor. They were poor. The Ansar, not all of them were well-to-do. Some of them were poor. But even though they were poor, they would give. وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. Even though they were in poverty, they were poor, they would give to the Muhajirin. Wow. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Those who are saved from the stinginess of their soul, they are the ones that are successful. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam built this society in Medina Munawwara based on what? This concept of brotherhood, al-ukhuwa fil Islam. If this takes root, not just lip service, call someone brother, 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 brother. No, if this actually takes root, where you think that this person is my brother, not like my brother, but he is my brother. There is no difference between him and my biological brother. Then you can imagine. This is radical. And that's what Quran speaks of. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَن يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا. That would you eat the flesh of your brother? In other words, the person that you have backbited, it's like you have eaten his flesh. After he died, cannibalism, where people eat the flesh of another human being. Quran is not saying, would you eat the flesh of your biological brother? Quran is saying, would you eat the flesh of your brother? In other words, this person that you have backbited is your brother and you have eaten his flesh. I have never, in my whole entire life, heard of a brother backbiting his biological brother in front of others. Have you? Even though those biological brothers might not get along, sometimes they don't get along, but even though they don't get along, they have a dispute, but that dispute is between themselves. I have never in my 52 years of life on this planet Earth have ever heard of a person backbiting his own biological brother. If we truly consider this person sitting next to us brother, regardless of his color or race or culture, then everything else will fall into place. We're not going to backbite him. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا. We're not going to seek out his faults. We're not going to try to expose him. We're not going to cheat him. وَلَا تُمَازِحْ. We're not going to ridicule him in public. وَلَا تُمَارِ أَخَاكَ. We are not going to argue with him. The problem is we don't consider him as a brother. That's why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got what you call the golden formula for building an Islamic mu'ashara, how we interact with one another. We talked about that in the beginning. How we behave with one another. The foundation for that is ukhuwa fil Islam, where we consider the person as not like a brother, a brother. He is my brother. End of story, end of sentence. May Allah Azza wa Jal build that bond of brotherhood. And this is a ni'mah. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. You have become brothers, Allah states, through His ni'mah. This is a ni'mah, a blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal. May Allah Azza wa Jal strengthen our bond of brotherhood and sisterhood for the sisters. May Allah Azza wa Jal truly make us brothers in Islam. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. Please pray yourself.